Good evening, Primetime Partiers. It's Primetime Party time. Welcome back to our hour of all things media and entertainment, live on the air at 9 p.m. at PTPTshow.com and on your time, wherever you stream podcasts. Tonight, we are going to crash land on a highly streamed Netflix K-drama. That's right, we are getting into Crash Landing on You. I know I've read a little bit about this show, and it's one of those that's really been a resurgence in the ever popular and always sought after Korean drama series. This one is focusing on a love story of a heiress from Seoul and a soldier slash kind of military captain in North Korea who begin a star-crossed love story when she paraglides pretty much literally into him. So we're going to have a good time with this one. It has everything: violence, love triangles, mobsters, military, global diplomacy. What more do you need? Oh, and then really cute romantic moments, obviously. So, yeah, today's show also was fully inspired and pitched by listener Wendy, who joins us today.
Hello.
Yes.
Welcome back to the show.
We are very happy to have her and happy to have pitched this show because I procrastinated watching it, and it was a good time. I'd also feel like now I'm gonna just binge through a lot of dramas because I think it just like sucked me in there. But yeah, Daniel, how you doing?
Oh, I am doing well tonight. Hope everybody else is doing well tonight here. Are we toasting? Are we roasting tonight? Tracy, Wendy, you got toasts, roasts?
Yeah.
Some toast and roasts.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Wendy, you are a guest. Go first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. So my roast for this evening is that the new iPhones don't allow you to listen to music and charge your phone at the same time anymore. And that just sucks. They just seem to make things more and more inconvenient, and they can't just keep doing that. They can't just keep getting away with that. It's not cool.
No,
but
it's special place in hell.
It is.
For the person in Apple development that keeps being like, what new stress can I bring to millions and billions?
Yeah, in the name of progress, which is not even progress. So like, let's take away the audio jack, No. Nobody asked for that. No one did. To do that.
They're just trying to push the AirPods, which, by the way, I tried wearing those on a flight one time.
Oh, they sound terrible.
They hurt my ears.
They would hurt your ears.
Specific ear shape for the Apple headphones that I've never really had. I've never been blessed with Apple-shaped ears. So I've always had to be more of a Sony gal when it came to the earbuds. They need to be the gummy ones, the little silicones. Need to be gentle. Not these like, I don't know, it just feels like trying to fit a circle into a square peg type deal when I try to wear those headphones. So yeah, I'm there with you.
They're
we
painful.
Don't like it. No. And the only other option you have is one of those like, they just basically want you to buy more merch because they have those like charging docks, and you're like, I don't need that. When you do need it is because they've taken away a perfectly other functional piece of equipment. So yeah, and I've been told things from family members in tech that they're like, yeah, they could have made these iPhones very waterproof from the beginning, and they just like made them slightly more each generation just to like be like, oh, progress. You're like, no. You could have done that a while ago. Same with like the glass shattering. I think they like pretty much made those to like, I used to shatter a phone so easily, and now it's like, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I had that conversation this last week.
How many phones have you shattered, Tracy?
Oh, I mean, like, I think at least 3, if not 5. Yeah, and then one of my friends, I went with her to the Genius Bar. I think she shattered like 10. Because I saw how many phones she had, and I was like, dude. She's like, I know. We're like, are we the poster children for Apple Care? Yes, we are. Yeah, I can recall at least two memorable cracks, and then I think I had one that was just like a not that bad. There's a few though. I think in like the 2011 versions, you could just shatter them. I still remember, Daniel, I think you might have been here. We were with like a friend at a house and they dropped their phone literally 1 inch from like above the coffee table to on the
Oh,
coffee
wow.
table,
Yeah.
shattered.
That's rough. That's rough.
That is unfortunate. Yeah. Well, luckily they're more waterproof now. They're more
Yeah,
shatterproof now. They're still as not roast proof, I suppose.
they're not roast proof. And they're still a high ticket item.
It is a
I've
tragedy.
thought about moving to another device, but then I'm like, there's enough things that I like where they keep me. But I've I've been definitely tempted by like some of these like the Sony phones that have like the really nice cameras. I'm like, I mean, I could be like that. Or like on this show that we watched, none of them have iPhones. And I'm kind of like, guys have some really nice looking phones. They're very like slim.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I'm
And it's
excited to get into the various product placements of this series.
I know. I wasn't sure if that was a Galaxy or a Samsung.
It has to be a Samsung phone. It has to be Samsung.
I want to think it was because it did seem like I was like, they're really advertising this phone. Like I can see how they get the notifications and everything throughout.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Do you have a toast, Wendy?
I do. So
Ooh.
I'm very thankful for her. So the toast is my friend Henry's fiance, Jocelyn, because Jocelyn made chocolate chip muffins yesterday and Henry brought them over and they are amazing. They were still warm when he handed them out. So thank you, Jocelyn. Jocelyn is an amazing person who works at Cedars-Sinai. So if you ever see a Jocelyn who is a nurse and I think she does anesthesiology, she also makes fantastic muffins. She should put that on her resume. So yeah.
Ooh, I like that. I also like when people put like fun plugs on their resume, like makes delicious warm muffins.
Yeah.
Or like loves to rollerblade. You're like, this person's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, my toast and my roast. My toast for this week is that it was listener and let's see, also has appeared in a few somewhat regular episodes. Sean's birthday this past week.
Oh, happy
So,
birthday, Sean.
Happy birthday.
yeah, so we did some fun stuff. Yeah, check out, let's see, a few establishments we did. Yeah, we checked out the Del Mar Sky Deck. And that was a fun time. They have some good eats, some good pizza. We also went to his younger brother's wedding recently in Rancho Palos Verdes. That was very beautiful, and I dragged him to many a traditional and authentic Japanese restaurant through Torrance because I had to. Because
Well,
because
that's
I
a
had
gift.
to.
That's a gift to Sean.
Oh,
Everybody should go to those restaurants.
it is. I also was just like, San Diego has a certain amount, but not very much. And I was like, while we're here, we're on the drive up, we're going to go to this place and get some katsu. And on the way back, we're going to get like some buns. And yeah, just like make the full loop. Go to the markets, get snacks. Yeah, I don't know if everyone does this, but like I always like if I stay at a hotel in a remote area, I stock up in like room snacks because I have very little, I'm ye of little faith in the takeout and delivery because I've been burned many times. The only thing, my main roast, though I have a couple, but I think the main one is we stayed at a somewhat like resorty hotel and I did buy snacks for a certain purpose. And I don't know about you guys, but I have an expectation for at least a microwave or a hot water
Oh.
maker over a certain price threshold. And I felt that there should have been one of those. And they just had like a Keurig. And I was like, listen, I know how often you wash this Keurig, and it's never. And I want to make noodles at midnight.
Tracy, out of
Yeah.
curiosity, what is the price point for you to expect those things?
I'm feeling like I really do expect those around like the 2 to 3 star hotel. It's a pretty low wish. So I'm also like, if you're somewhere above that, you're kind of like, well, there's a given. They'll obviously have a tea kettle. And I was like, oh no. No, that was not a given. Oh no. But yeah, it was totally fine. I stocked up on many buns, so we were good. But yeah, I also was just like, the amount of instant noodles I brought here was fairly unnecessary. But yeah, I don't. Oh yeah, I did have a better roast, and I know I'm ranting a little bit right now, but it's okay. We'll get into the show pretty soon. But I did encounter some individuals at this wedding that there's like certain conversations you don't think would happen. There's just like people you don't think exist. And like I was in a group and to dinosaur archaeology was a scam.
Wow.
Going to the moon was a scam, which like context is some of these people are from like South Orange County, which can get highly conservative with conspiracy theories, I think. And I sat there for a bit and then I eventually had to like leave and just be like, they're like, so Trace, what's your thoughts? And I was very much like, well, I have a friend getting like her PhD who works in like Egyptology. So like I'm pretty on the archaeology train. I don't really know anyone who doesn't believe in dinosaurs. This is odd. And then I was like, and my grandpa worked on most of the Apollo missions, so I got to go. And then they were like, oh, they're like, we picked the wrong person to talk about this with. I was like, you definitely did pick poorly. But then I went and talked to someone there who I'd chatted with the day before, and they were like, I was like, I met these people. They had these thoughts. And he was like, Tracy, we talked about this earlier, like we're, more progressive leaning. And I was just like, was there a movement I missed where the conservatives stopped believing in dinosaurs? And it was just like, there's some people you have not met. And then he was like, we're like some lefties. He's like, but this guy who was just like standing with us, he's a righty. And I was just like, so yeah, the war on dinosaurs, like dinosaurs is sin. When that would start? And he was just kind of like, ugh. So that was a fun moment. Yeah, that probably went on longer than anyone needed it to.
Wait, and is that a roast? That's your roast, right?
Yeah, it is a roast. It's
okay.
I mean, it was kind of like I had fun with it, but then later I was like, I don't know. It was definitely one of those where I was just like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, am I in a bubble where I don't think these people exist? Or are some people just like wild and wacky and you just like find them and you're like, I don't ever feel like I run into you guys, but then like, some things start to make more sense.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be sure what to think about this anecdote for several hours.
It's going to take you a while to process.
Yeah, I think so.
This is a very large roast. This like drive-by theoretical conversation. I know. It's odd too to have that sort of chat at like the end of an evening, kind of like the drinks are kind of coming to a close of a wedding. But I also, that's just keeps it interesting, guys. Keeps it interesting.
Absolutely.
Since we have, done a crash course in the various social interactions I've had in the past 2 weeks, while we've had a little bit of a break, we are going to just take just a tiny little break before crash landing on you. So, crash landing on you. This is quite the show to get into. Quite the extensive show.
Yeah.
Everybody, you need some time. You need some time to get through this. This is not an easy binge in the sense of time. It is in the sense of like you want to know what happens next. But these episodes run about an hour to an hour and a half to the finale's almost 2 hours. So
Yeah.
they're fairly lengthy. I asked our show correspondent, Heather, who's watched many K-dramas, and I was like, is this a typical, viewing length for these? And she said fairly, yeah. She's like an hour to 2 hours, ranging on kind of where you're at in the season is pretty typical. So makes sense. I mean, I think there's a lot of dramas produced on our side that are, they usually hit the hour mark. Some of them are in more the 45 to 50 minutes. I do think that is common to be like just under an hour, at least for network shows. But this is a Netflix. So it is not surprising that they got to do whatever they wanted to do. But the main part of this show is all the relationships, which is what we're mostly going to chat about, and kind of how all of those intertwine with each other. You'll definitely get some plot out of there. But yeah, Wendy, what is like your favorite part of their meet cute? And we can get into what the meet cute is.
Yeah. So I mean, my producer, Jin, that she introduced me to this. And I'm not a fan of Korean dramas because I feel like they're really melodramatic. The plot lines are ridiculous. But Jin said, you must watch this show. And so I gave it a shot and I fell in love with it because their chemistry between Yoon Se and Captain Ri is really, really good. It is better than I expected because I just thought she would just be like a stuck-up rich person and he would just be this robot, but it's actually way more than that. And I think that is what makes their mute cute and the relationship actually entertaining. That it's still somewhat realistic as one can expect when you are a young woman who accidentally enters North Korea and falls in love with a North Korean captain. I mean, other than that, it is a pretty grounded show in the way they interact because she's really ridiculous, but he's also a very grounding force in the beginning. Yeah, until the middle, I believe. The first half.
You get the idea that she's and they talk about it as the show goes on, but she's sort of lost and she just has got to test out she runs like a fashion beauty company, and so she wants to test out the technical wear for paragliding.
Right.
She's like, I'll do them myself. They're like, but the weather conditions. She's like, it's fine. But she was kind of also like searching for something. And then, yeah, very like Wizard of Oz style tornado comes in and just blows her into the DMZ. She just like wakes up like hanging in the tree.
Yeah. And she doesn't fall, in her words. She descends onto him.
Yeah. And it's very much an immediate like, but there's one thing that I think adds to their chemistry that, you can take it or leave it because you can only trust online sources so much. But according to, they have it from, I think they said Channel 1. Let me get this a little bit on there. But they are reportedly dating in real life.
I have heard that, and I gotta say, I don't love it. It's weird. I don't actually like that they're dating in real life. For whatever reason, it's not a plus for me.
It makes sense only because when I started looking up these actors, I saw that they were in like a few movies together, which doesn't mean anything. Yes. But I was kind of like, oh, so this is like a repeat pairing. And I really was like, huh. And then as I Googled it a little bit more, I was like, oh, I see. Which would be interesting if they make any more of this or somewhat like of a spinoff, because you're like, I wonder how much of this played in. But it does kind of, you are very like, I definitely shed a tear many a episode of like
Oh
the
yeah, I
on-screen
cried a lot.
chemistry is good. And, to cite a similar, but yet also so different uh show that we've covered on this, I feel like a lot of times I watched the relationship and was like, I feel like this is what like Twilight wanted to do without it being like
Oh my
problematic.
gosh.
Yeah, like because the guy does all the things, and we talked about this a little bit when we were planning this episode, but like he does all the things that like kind of like the idealistic things that a guy would do in this like hetero relationship
Yes,
of like
yes.
he remembered my special candle from the store that he pretended to not listen to earlier. And then, and then there's like later on in the show where there's like medical stuff happening, not to give spoilers, but he just like watches her and doesn't like eat or sleep. He just like stands watching her until she's conscious. And you're like, okay, I see this. I've seen this before, but it was a lot more toxic and a lot more vampire.
Yeah, a lot more sparkles, a lot more toxic, and but you're right, Tracy. It's really fulfilling a lot of women's fantasies. Just that
That's the right word.
he provides all of her needs. He just shows up when she needs him, and she needs him a lot. She whines a lot, which I thought was really annoying. But it is true. Like she'll just complain, like, I can't sleep without a candle, and then he'll go and buy her a candle. And
like, dude, you're captive in North Korea. She's like, I know, but like you could get me a candle.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
could
least
get
you
me a
could do.
candle,
And then part of me is like, I hear you.
Yeah, it's like it's tough out here. You guys have candles? Your electricity is not reliable. You definitely have candles. So
I know.
yeah, I think that they're really good at fulfilling the fantasy, and also because it's such a conservative show.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the US, every act is so exciting. Them sitting closer together is a big deal.
Yeah,
Which
you
is
could see the hand holding in
refreshing.
public, and like all those little moments would get like, especially with I think like the show music and everything, it would like bring it to like a big like crescendo moment. And it would, every once in a while it would be like, okay, they're gonna kiss or something. But like most of the time it was like small things or just like eye contact for, minutes.
Yeah, no, that scene when she is walking at the market alone and it's at night and he rushes to find her and he lights a scented candle and holds it up in the air, because that's how you find someone, Tracy. That's how that works. That was actually really emotional. And then she shows up and she cries, and I bought into it. So
yeah, I mean, we all bought into it. It also, the other movie, if people have seen it, that has some similarities is if anyone has watched like an older, it's not that old, I think it's from the 90s or early 2000s, but Serendipity. It also has a little bit of that vibe because they're very into the kind of like these unplanned meetings. So that movie is a little bit more specifically about that. And this one is like they are more into fate.
Right. Did you guys like that movie?
I have not seen it.
I saw the trailer.
Oh, interesting. That's a me only on this one. But yeah, I think I watched it during like a holiday season because it's somewhat around that time of year. But yeah, it's like they do things like write their phone number in a random book and put it at a used bookstore, and then like one of them goes and is like, oh, I bought the book that has the phone number, so I'll call them. And then they just kind of have all these chance encounters. But which this one, it's like they kind of have these chance encounters, but it's supposed to kind of, after a certain while, you're like, it's because they're meant to be. Though towards the end, you're like, you're also increasing your odds. You're hoping for fate, but you're also going to be like, I'm going to show up in the exact location just to see how this goes. Eventually, I'll hit it. But yeah, I think it's true. And that's the other thing that's that's getting to it. The reason they have to keep re-meeting and having more and more meet cutes is because they also have to say goodbye a lot because due to their circumstances, they always seem to be like they're going to part and have like the big Casablanca moment, but they just don't because they're like, and it's very quick. Like you normally are like, oh, the people are not together, they're going to do something. But this is one where it'll be like, I'm leaving you, you're going to go do your own thing, blah, close the car door, and then be like, no, I'm going to go back after them, drive back after them. 2 minutes later, they don't really keep you on the edge too long.
They
about the
don't. They
relationship.
don't. But I think that's also why I think the show works
Yeah.
because he never promises her in the beginning that they're going to be together. There's obviously a chemistry, but it's very clear that he is just going to push her away, literally, because he wants her to go home. And whenever she says, I'll think of you, he said, don't think of me. Just go home and pretend it never happened. And he's lying the whole time. He's lying because he is going to think about her. The episode where she has to take passport photos.
Yeah.
She tells him, maybe we should take a photo together. And he says, no, we shouldn't have any evidence of this. And then he gets evidence of it by getting a 6 photo. Yes. That is just, that's more of the moments where you cue the music and you cry because he cares so much, but he keeps saying to her that he doesn't, which adds to the tension and the drama of the whole episode.
Yeah, they definitely like to pull the thing of like he's kind of like icy at first, but I think they really do play into the acts of like the acts of like what's not gestures, but it's like he kind of likes to do a lot of like service oriented things for her, like acts of service. That's what I was thinking of in like the love languages type of way. But like I still remember, I think it's in episode 2 or maybe 3 of after they, drink with the guys, the other military guys, he makes her like handmade noodles and then like gets espresso beans that he keeps in a special place, roasts them outside from scratch, and then makes her pour overs. I think these are also the things that would play into like female fantasy. He makes me handmade noodles and like individual batch pour over.
Right. It's like the hipster dream.
Which like it is funny is, and this is like another aspect of this show is half of it, which is actually filmed apparently in the Jeju Island area, which is why it looks a bit more like, naturey and not like the urban landscapes of Seoul for the areas filmed in the fictionalized North Korea. But they do kind of this more idyllic lifestyle there, and part of it is supposed to be of lack of technology and resources. And I think this is like an interesting way of it. They do show like some things that make it seem very like quaint, and even she's like, oh, the hipsters in Seoul would love this. But it's like, and it's like one of those where it becomes like a very like I wouldn't say dangerous, but they definitely toe the line with like how kind of positive they make that seem, because it's always sprinkled in with the very realistic hardships that they put up front pretty soon. Like the first time she realizes she's in a village and watches them do like their morning dance that they always have to do and sing the song, she's kind of like, oh my gosh, where am I? And she really like starts to pick up on a lot of things that she has to do in order, she's hiding in a kimchi basement and doing
the little cellar.
The kimchi cellar instead of the kimchi refrigerator. But like, and part of that is because she's in the Captain Ree's like military village, basically. It's like housing for soldiers and then their families, versus like where Ree's original ex-fiance lives in the major city, seems to have most of the things that are, available, but I think the main things they kind of really touch on when they start in North Korea and then move south is like the access to electricity, internet, and hot water. And those are the things that like they'll bring up a lot as an issue, but then they kind of also contrast it with like, the scenes of them just having really wholesome moments of we're gonna go
Yeah.
catch these crabs and then make like a nice like over the fire stew and have like a goodbye barbecue for the girl we've been hiding for like months. But sprinkled within that is a good amount of violence in the show.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think that's like one thing that I didn't expect going into this, even though like there's kind of like, yeah, I think like the interesting part of covering the relationships of this show is like the other main relationship in the show is the relationships between North and South Korea that play a big part in the couple's relationship and kind of why they can't have such a simple relationship going around, which is kind of how we get into. So, Sari and Ree. Wendy, what are your like favorite things about Sari and Ree? And what are the ones that you're kind of like, I want to call these characters out on a few things?
Well, I mean, I think it's really great how they really do care about each other. And I like that in the beginning, he helps her out a lot. And as time goes on, she tells him, "You helped me out a lot." And of course, spoiler alert, this episode is for people who have already seen the show. This is not an introductory
Oh no.
topic. So they do spend some time in South Korea. And what I do like is that he does spend a lot of time helping her in North Korea. But when they're in South Korea, she tells him, "You're in my home now. I can help you. I'm a very powerful person here." So I like that they're able to have that balance
Yeah.
and they're equals in the way that they're both very powerful people in their own homeland. And that to me was really interesting. That's what I liked a lot about it, because I really did think that she was very annoying. Even though she was obviously a very smart, capable person, she was very annoying and needy and demanding with not just him, but his team. But I did like when she went back, she was like, "I know how to do things here." So that was really good. And what I didn't like is that I think they're kind of jerks, to the people around them. They're pretty selfish people in many ways. Even though she's definitely selfish. And he comes off like a very noble person, but they do things that hurt other people and they don't seem to realize it at all.
Yeah, they both seem to act selfishly in a defensive way. Like
Mm-hmm.
she has the Sari backstory for listeners who've watched and ones that are intrigued with knowing everything about the plot before watching, is is that Sari is, a CEO. She's very powerful, but like she also had this, weird childhood of the mom was out of the picture and her dad had an affair, and that's kind of how she came to be. But then she lived with her dad's like wife and thus her kind of stepmom and all of the siblings, and it does seem to be this kind of like you know children fighting to be the heirs, and the family seem to have their own dicey business decisions and tied up in kind of sketchy areas. And then on the flip side, Ree is the son of the, I think they call it General Bureau of Political Director. And he's supposed to be like just very highly ranked within the military slash also I think it's kind of supposed to be like within the kind of political hierarchy. And so he's, even though he's in the military as well, people don't always know the association. And but he's the reason he's able to have all these kind of connections to try to get her home is he uses pretty much everything he has or everything everyone knows. So yeah, they both do that, but like because he had the tough childhood of like the brother dying in the accident and the other things too. I think that's also why he kind of is like, I have to do this for love. I can't let another one be lost. When really it's also like, you also want to do this because you want to like go be with her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and you're willing to risk like a lot of other people for this. So there are parts that, you know, they both risk kind of their own families on the relationship existing, since both of the governments are not fans. Even though it kind of seemed like, you know, if they wanted to stay, they probably could have, but that just would have not really been a climactic ending to the show. So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, they definitely have their moments where you're like, oh, that are little cringy, but you're always rooting for them. And on that note, there are another couple characters we wanted to compare, and there's Sari, and then there's Dan. And Dan is the original fiance and then ex-fiance of Ree. It's probably one of the most problematic parts of Ree.
Yeah,
is
it
that,
is.
he
They
is
do her dirty.
engaged
Yes,
for,
yes.
and yeah, they do.
They
Yeah,
do her dirty.
very dirty. Yeah, he's engaged to this woman who's supposed to be studying in Russia. And this whole time he's like, well, I have an easy fix. I'll have Sari be my fiance, because apparently no one knows he's been engaged for almost a decade. So that's the part where you're like, ooh, Ree,
I
no,
know.
that's bad, man. You kept this girl on a hook for like 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. Because what woman doesn't like to be kept a secret, you know? That's what every woman wants. Yeah, no, it's weird that because he's so loving to Seri. That's what I'm saying. Like each other, they're so good to each other. But to
Yeah.
the other people in their lives, they're pretty selfish and they can do some pretty shady things because they do the trope of they do the typical soap opera trope of, oh my gosh, the couple that's not a couple has to now pretend to be a couple. And the episode where they find her and they demand her to tell them who she is, right? Because the village people, it's a small village, they know everybody in that village and she's definitely not a member.
Oh
So who the
yeah.
hell is she? And they're like, tell us. And he comes in, he says, she is my fiance. And then I just swoon, like, oh my gosh, you just called her your fiance. You guys are gonna have to pretend. And they're cool with pretending, but then to the actual fiance, he's pretty rude to, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, and they seem to have a lot of like, I mean, even when she returns from Russia, it does seem to be like Dan is mutually kind of uninterested in the relationship, but is also like we have to do things the way they have to be done here.
Yeah.
They're both kind of like locked into a certain future and a certain lifestyle. And a big part of this show is people kind of breaking off from their kind of paths that they thought that they had to stick on. And hers, you know, goes through quite a turbulent trajectory. But that's where, you know, both of them, both Sari and Dan, are pretty like sassy, quick-witted, powerful, intelligent, and and pretty. And so like they have a lot of crossover, but you do feel for Dan in the sense of like, she did not do anything wrong by just randomly coming home for a visit.
Right.
And then finding her just like tagging along to everything in a somewhat suspicious and flirtatious way. And I think Daniel has a specific moment that he picked up on from the Sari and Dan relationship.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, we're watching the show. This is my first episode, is episode 6. It's this episode where Dan gets back. And she like the first, like I'm just plugging away on like Game Builder Garage on Switch. I kind of look up. I'm like, oh, the show seems nice. Like the love music's, you know, really pleasant. And all of a sudden there's like this scene in the bathroom where like his fiance Dan is like calling her a slut to her face. And I'm just like, whoa, I don't know what kind of vocabulary usually gets thrown around in women's rooms, but this seems like a moment. And so I'm just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna be a little more into this show. Like, this is the protagonist of the show. It doesn't really seem like you should be calling her this. But then later there's this scene, and like, she's met the fiance. They're out grabbing beers at this like really fine establishment. It looked like it was at the top of the skyscraper or something.
Oh yeah,
And
beautiful.
she's like sitting there. She looks a little tipsy. She snuggles up to him and she's like talking about, oh, you know what? You're supposed to see first snowfall with your lover while they're watching first snowfall. I'm just like, you know what? She is a little slut.
She is.
She is. And she wins. She does.
She does win.
She
And by the
does.
finale, I was really rooting for her. That's a great
She
finale.
does win, and because she came on to him hard every moment.
Oh,
she's
yeah.
just cuddling up to him every moment she gets.
Well, and he's kind of this like sought after. Well, the word they use a lot, which I don't know if it's. I mean, it works, but I don't know if this is something where like if you knew the language, it would translate even better. But they mostly refer to him as like a babe magnet pretty much everywhere. Like the village
yeah.
ladies will like
They do.
doll themselves up and make him all of these dishes every time he comes home. And like it seems like it's known throughout the lands, like, oh yeah, that guy who's the son of the director, he's really dreamy. And everyone just kind of like flocks to him. So, which I do kind of find interesting and fun because I feel like that happens a lot as like in romance and drama based shows where it's like the girl has this like mistake that everyone's like, oh, we're all gravitate to her. But this one kind of like flips it and it's like, oh, the guy. All of the ladies are after him in this like almost like, he's Pied Pipery type of way. So yeah, that's like a fun little switch that they have in this show. But yeah, like Sari definitely deserves that. And she even kind of like wasn't that mad when Dan called her a slut in the bathroom.
Right. She was like, yeah, no, I could see why you said that. But
she's like, oh, that's totally something I would say. You're just like,
she's pretty funny.
One of the things we can't help but notice are product placements throughout the show. Mostly food, but also some others. And you do wonder who's getting paid, or is the feature enough. So the main one, I think, the most prominent of all, is BBQ chicken. BBQ chicken is this fried chicken chain. And, Korean fried chicken is just delicious. I definitely, after I watched about 5 episodes of Once They're in Seoul, you kind of have to go get yourself some. It's really up there. But yeah, it is like I think they're one of their most prominent chains. They did have one near where I went to college, so I have frequented it. It is quite good. But I think what's interesting about this is like when you watch it from the beginning to the end, you start to notice they have that continuity of Sari's team, the 2 guys that are the pretty much only people who really count on her not being dead, have all of their meetings and with the insurance guy who's like, gathering paperwork to go, okay, we're pretty sure this is where she landed paragliding and stuff. Most of these meetings happen at the fried chicken establishment. And then later, when all of the military boys from North Korea come, they also like they first start off like staring at the fried chicken like this is crazy. One of the guys on the team actually becomes a fried chicken delivery guy for a day just to get the chicken because they were working on like a small military stipend until they meet up with Sari, who just kind of sets them up. And then they just kind of really live that Gangnam lifestyle. but before that, they're like really they're really keeping a tight budget, which gets to one of the other chains that they really feature a lot, which is and I am probably really butchering the pronunciation. I can't even say pronunciation, so I'm going to say this wrong. But the Jimbaljang, which is like the sauna slash kind of like bathhouse hot spring that you do. And if anyone is unfamiliar with these, similar to a lot of different like bathhouses, but this one in particular, you usually get dressed in like a kind of cord that they have. And it's usually kind of like a t-shirt and like shorts type situation. And before that, you shower, you do like your hot pools, and then there's like these rocks and sauna rooms that you can do. But the main aspect is that they are usually 24-hour and you can technically sleep over at them. And so that's what this whole team of guys does because they're kind of like, oh, this is a great one-stop shop. We got our shower. We get to just chill in this like spa, which is not bad, and we can stay overnight, so it's not a big deal to keep our profile. So that's like one of the ones that are pretty fun. And yeah, Daniel, have you ever done the K spa?
I have not. No.
Ah, interesting. Okay, I just wanted to know since I know it's like not too far from you, so I wasn't sure if you had gone. But yeah, it's like I've gone to the one a couple of times. Yeah, and yeah, they're very fun, but the saunas are no joke. They're really good, but they're really toasty. So I would say if you are a beginner in the world of sauna, I'm like, I would pace yourself. I would, start yourself small and move up. But yeah, they're a good time. A few other chains. Wendy, do you want to talk about both Subway, which is a pretty short and sweet one, and then Angels and Us?
Well, I think it's interesting because the subway happens a couple of times, and I think that these are like wealthy people that would
That's
never
not true.
eat at a subway.
I didn't buy that for a second.
So I don't know what they were doing there. They're just like, oh yeah, we have lunch here on the daily. You do not. You do not.
No, we talked about Chuck and the workers of the Buy More. Yeah, I buy them going to Subway. These people, they eat Subway a lot. There's no way.
There's no way. And then there's even a later moment where they show her, they show her giving them a gesture of goodwill by eating lunch with them at a Subway. And they're all so happy to be there. Nobody's happy when their boss gets them Subway, even if it's free.
Unless Subway
That's
is just
not
like
a thing.
immaculate over in Korea or something. It just, I don't even, I scratch my head at all those scenes.
So, really interesting thing that I had found about the Subway product placement is this is not only us who have noticed this and thought, I question that. There's an article in the New York Times titled Korean TV's Unlikely Star Subway Sandwiches. And apparently they're saying the sandwiches chain's aggressive use of product placement has made it a ubiquitous present on the country's television shows. So and they do use a lot of imagery from Crash Landing on You for this, but then also some other shows. It's apparently appeared in at least 17 K-dramas and shows. So there is something there that they're really trying to push Subway across platforms because it doesn't seem like it's not to like, I have not been to Korea. I cannot speak on behalf of the presence of Subway, but I just don't feel like it is this prevalent or beloved if we don't like it that much. I'm like, would they like it? But the only caveat I'll give to that is I have tried some fast food brands in states that I think are trash abroad, and they're a lot better. So
it could be that.
It could be, but it's not.
I don't think so.
It's just not.
I don't have a lot of faith in Subway, though. I think there's other brands where I'm like, okay, Swiss Burger King, I could see this. But like, you're like, Subway anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the effort of the Subway marketing team, but it's just not that good. And it's not just TV shows. I have seen YouTube channels they have food-based videos, and they're eating at Subway, and that's not a choice. You know, they were paid to do this. This is not a fun little thing to decide to do because it's so tasty, because everyone knows it's not.
I have to imagine there's something. I don't know. I don't know. I believe in dinosaurs, but like this is
This is
something
where we
else.
are the people who are like,
Something's not right.
I have some doubts. Yeah. The only quotes I found in this article that kind of speak to that are saying that it's generally viewed as healthier than burger chains, and that's what added to its appeal. And this someone who lived both in the States and Seoul said that they rarely ate at it while in the States, but now he eats it regularly in Seoul and that it tastes better there. So,
Wait, where was
He
it?
was
This is
also
in the
paid
New
by
York Times
Subway.
article, or is this a different
Yeah.
source?
Yeah, it's in the same New York Times article. I will
Good for
link it in
them
the
for
show notes, man.
investigating. Yeah,
I know, it's one of those where I'm
linking
like,
this.
I am intrigued. Other than like Austin Powers, I've never seen such a presence of Subway. Because that and that was it's odd. It's an odd one of all of the fast food chains to really make a comeback, and it's similar to the anime use of Whack-Donald's, but this one's, actual product placement instead of just like beating around the copyright bush. But yeah, the other one we had was Angels in Us. This one seems a little bit more like we could buy into it.
Yeah, that seemed a little more legit. They're a very popular coffee chain, and it didn't seem outrageous. It just seemed weird that they always had coffee at that place. That was the only big difference.
Yeah, I think you can kind of, from watching this show, understand why a lot of other shows do like an unbranded location or just kind of like a generic coffee house, other than like the fact that the Big Bang Theory was like always at Cheesecake Factory because that's where they worked. It's like there's a lot of ones where you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter that they're there. But for these, it kind of did because they wanted to share differences, I think, between both of their hometowns, and having like these chain restaurants is something that they probably didn't get as much when they were, really seemed like a lot of home cooking
Mm.
when she was, hostage basically. No, somewhat trying to get home. But yeah, that was like the thing I think she really also wanted to share, because I think as soon as Ree got there, she's like, what do you want? Chinese pizza, whatever. Because he opens her fridge and goes, I thought you were rich. Why is there only water bottles in there? She's like, well, I don't cook. And he's just like, oh, okay. And I think he's like pretty bitten by the takeout bug pretty quickly, like, oh yeah, this isn't bad. But at the same time, you do miss like their little like they have different moments, because it's like, yeah, they do beer chicken, and they do have a night where they do like at home Korean barbecue, where they have like the grill out and all of the boys are over. So they still do some of those moments. I think like in general, the meal times at this show tend to have a lot of significance, which I don't know if that's intentional or not, but a lot of like kind of there's like sweet moments and a lot of telling moments to me that seem to happen like over food, because that's also where the parents, they make themselves this breakfast for Sari's birthday, and there's like a traditional thing where you have this like seaweed soup on someone's birthday, and so they're having that and then realizing like our other kids never come over unless it's for money, and that's kind of when they start to go like, you start to learn how the parents feel about the other siblings, that Sari's siblings are very interesting. They definitely play into a lot of why she was able to survive, I think, when she was abroad. And that gets into like the exterior characters that we wanted to chat about. And we'll round it back out to the family. But I think let's start out with some more kind of beloved characters. How did you enjoy the village ladies, as we like to call them?
The village ladies are great because they just humanize a lot of North Korea that we don't really ever see. And they definitely gave off like a small town vibe, meaning they know everybody because there's only a small number of people. There's only like 50 people in the town. They know everybody and they all cooperate because they need to. And so they represent a lot of this sisterhood and community that these villages have. And obviously, you will see a downside to that, or how the fact that they're still in North Korea. So there's things like government checks and control officers, but they are so much fun and they're such a quaint representation of like a simpler life.
Yeah, it's like in a weird way gives me that kind of like Stars Hollow vibe of like
Yeah.
the town is small, there's kind of like quirky characters, and at the same time too, it also means like no one can really get away with anything
Yes.
because there's the gossip can only go so far and the radius is pretty small. And but on the flip side, you also see them like really quite literally throw themselves on the lines for
Hmm.
people. So they'll kind of decide, and it does kind of have a revealing aspect of their way of life of, they can't, not everyone can always follow every single rule because there are too many and there's just so many ways to get in trouble. But if you're kind of banded together, they kind of help, keep people from having really tragic ends if they're able to do it. Like, and I think a lot of it is like they try to like postpone if they're having any issues or any problems by like having some sort of like sneaky ways of getting out of things, or just kind of the way you'll see people phrase things. It's kind of like if you put it on paper, they couldn't get in trouble. And that's like some of the nice things the village ladies do. But yeah, it's funny because at first they're not very accepting of Sari.
No, they're not.
No. And
But
then
then she
they,
wins them over,
yeah.
but only because she wants to use them. So that's kind of like a pattern here.
That one I'll give her a slight pass on because she needed to. I feel like there's a point of, I think both of them have their manipulative moments, but she definitely had to do a certain amount to be like, I got to be able to get by around here. So I got to use anyone who can help me out, like help me get out of here. So I will give her that, but then there are moments you can tell that she's also just lonely. And so she wants
Yeah,
to
she
like
is.
be able to be friends with these people, and she can only tell them so much. So yeah, I like all of them for that. I especially enjoyed one of the village ladies who's married to a guy called the Rat, and he was known as like the wiretapper, and he plays a certain role of knowing kind of the backstory around Captain, and he also kind of knows a lot of dirt with this main villain whose name is Gong is the last name. I think it's Chol Gong. And he's the one who is really gunning after Ri. He's mostly because he himself is entwined with a lot of he's just breaking all the laws, somewhat in a organized crime type situation. And he, has enlisted the wiretapper kind of to listen in on certain people. And what's cute too is the guy who's the rat. So the wiretapper listens in on all of the romantic moments between Rin and Sari, and you'll
Mhm.
just see him
Yeah.
like in his headset, and he's just like,
Oh yeah,
oh.
he cries along with the audience because he's listening too.
Yeah, a lot of these exterior characters, like the village ladies and the military guys, they really do serve to kind of be the audience in the show in a way that seems to be intentional and sometimes maybe not. But there are full moments where, especially the guys, one of them is obsessed with Korean dramas, and he will just say like, well, in the Korean drama, this is where they would fall in love, or in the Korean drama, this is what you do for this. And there's even a moment where they're caught trying to early on get Sari on a boat to help her escape, and they're starting to get caught, and he's like, well, I know what they even Ree is like, I know what they would do in the drama in this moment in order to not get in trouble. And that's when they first kiss, is because he's like, oh, we'll just pretend to be a couple. Which is
Yes.
everyone's kind of like, we were waiting for this moment. But yeah, and even one of the actors is more kind of, it seems like most of the characters on the show seem pretty quiet about their politics, particularly the ones from North Korea. It does not seem like they're really like, they're just kind of trying to get by. They're not fully really in and out. And that's probably intentional of the show too. They don't want to be like glorifying any of the political ideals that are leading to, certain hardships. But one of them is a little bit more kind of proponent, but you also kind of watch that get broken down a bit when they do go back down to Seoul to go get Ree back. And his main thing is always like saying, they brought all the cars out because we're visiting. But they start to notice pretty quickly, in that particular character too serves kind of as the representation, it seems, for the group of like understanding like, here are the things that we were maybe not told accurately. Because once they go down to Seoul, they're kind of like, okay, there are not food shortages here. We can, they start to go to the computer gaming cafes, and they're like,
yes, that's
we
one of the
can
best
do,
parts.
it's so cute. I know. And they're like, we can do Wi-Fi everywhere. We can do all these things. And obviously they're getting like a little bit of a different taste of it, because like Sari lives in like one of the nicest neighborhoods, and she like just kind of goes like, here's credit cards, go crazy. So it's like not exactly what like everyday life would necessarily be, but it's also like it's their little treat outside of their day to day, where they're like in somewhat, I think they mention halfway through the series that one of them, their military like length is about 9 more years. So a lot of them are kind of like, we're stuck in this, and we're stuck in this for a while, which explains why, because I think a lot of these characters, you might watch this and think like, why wouldn't they stay, outside of like, worrying about what would happen to their families and other people. And you do see how they would have a tough time, like, in addition to that side of it, is like they're also military based. So there's probably extra bad consequences for defecting on that level, especially since some of them, including Ree, were high up a certain amount. So yeah, you do look at all of them as sort of these are the good parts of their life there, because they do have this band of good friends. And when you compare it with Sari's family, it's like, oh, these people are really here for each other. They remember each other's birthdays. They do all these cute things. And the family does not
Yeah, the
really.
family, they're not good people.
No. Now, who is your least favorite character in Sari's family?
Oh, the second brother, because that's easy, because he's just
Oh,
so evil, almost like too evil. And it's funny because he obviously wants the company, and he actually wants to try and do a good job, unlike the oldest brother that just wants to be lazy and rich and play golf all day. But the second brother actually wants to be seen as a legit authority figure, but he's just incompetent. He just can't do it, and he's greedy, and that's why he got swindled so easily. And so he's really easy to hate because he throws everyone under the bus, including his wife, which is hilarious because there's such a team until he just turns around and literally points at her like, she did it. She told me to do it. Tell them, sweetie, that you told me to do it. And he even tries to record her saying that the whole crime was her idea. And I think that's just hilarious. So he's definitely the person to hate because it's so easy to do so.
yeah. They're both really evil. And at first I was like, I don't know, the wife seemed to really like be the one calling the shots with a lot of the like, hey, let's like put a hit on Sari and like all these things. But then yeah, once he gets caught and just turns on her so quickly and then is trying
Yeah.
to divorce her while in prison, and even the mom's like, I didn't even try to do that when your dad went to jail. Like, gosh, she's such a headache.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. There's definitely times, even before he tries to record her on his cell phone to make her commit to crime, like to make her admit to committing crimes. There's a couple of times where he even says it was your fault, and I just thought, lady, you gotta leave him, okay? He doesn't care about you, and he's just trying to screw you over. But I think in terms of one of my favorite family members, though, I love her sister-in-law
I know.
because she's so dumb and she's not innocent because she's she's like the second, oh, she's like the oldest brother. The oldest brother's wife is really silly, but she just wants to stay rich, and not in an evil way, but in a, I just want to be lazy. But she's such a supportive wife. She's like, babe, you got this, you can do this. And whatever a husband does, even when he's acting like an idiot, she's like, but you can do it, it's okay, I love you. So that's
Yeah,
actually very endearing.
they're not perfect in the sense of like they do fully suck up. They have no shame with like, we just want to be in the, correct placement in the sibling hierarchy, but they don't do anything backstabby. So I like them for that reason. They're just like, you know, they are sycophants, and especially, but you do like to see them support each other. I agree. Like, there'll be times where she's just like, he'll be like, I don't know, should I do this? And she'll be like, of course you should do it. You should do it the most, and you'll be great at it too. And he'll be like, you're right. But you know what? You're also the best because you also cheer me on. And she's like, yeah. And then they just are really lovey dovey. But it is
Yeah.
like sweet because you do just see them like root each other on all the time, even when it's like for them to be like, now you're gonna, she's like, she'll like have these schemes of like, I'm gonna go have lunch with your mom and I'll get this all lined up for you, blah blah blah. And even when it like crashes and burns because it's so transparent, you do kind of go like, you really like go all out for this guy.
Yeah,
So
they do.
that's
Yeah.
that part is sweet. And obviously the relationship with the mom is tricky. It's a definitely a, I think though it shows a nice arc. It starts so, you know, real icy from both ends. And, the mom definitely made a lot of mistakes growing up. She was not put in a great position for sure. But there's a lot of things where you're like, "Ee, these are some traumatizing flashbacks for young Sari." But towards the end, you see like their mother-daughter relationship, and it turns out to be very strong. And I think the time she's away where the mom doesn't know where she's at, she starts to really question like all the things I said and kind of like wishing her to disappear. Those, now that she has disappeared, I don't like that, and I'm left with this, these other siblings who really can't take care of themselves. Even the like best ones, it's like they just want to be rich and lazy, so they're not really trying to go off on their own. And then the other ones are trying to be like, just monopolize the family money in some way that earns their favor. So she kind of like starts to have what seems to be a big realization while Sari is gone. But what did you also think of Sari's staff on the other end of the relationships on the show?
I think Stary Staff is a lot of fun because they humanize her, or they allow her to show a nicer side, because obviously they know her from when she was really mean and really ruthless. And then they're, I guess they're the show's way of showing that she's changing, because they'll say, "Oh, she's nicer to us. The other day she told us we could take a break." And so obviously the bar for work, like employer employee relationship, is not very high, but they're really great because they do care about finding her. They're the only ones that gave a damn about finding her, and they went through a lot to get her back, and also they're rewarded for it. She shows her appreciation for what they've done for her.
Yeah. I think the one episode that really shows her old self in not the best light would be that Christmas episode.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. She was like, "It's Christmas. Why shouldn't we be working?" Like she's Scrooge. So yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah, it was, I think, like Christmas Eve at 10 p.m. is how they
Yeah.
like slotted it. And people were like, come on, Sari, like maybe we should, wrap it up and go home. And she went to the guy who asked that, who's one of her kind of favorite people who works for her, and goes, "Are you a Christian?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "So this is just a day like any other day." And you're just kind of like, whoa, that is
Yeah,
harsh. So you
yeah.
can kind of see why, like, so yeah, she really did seem like pretty rigid as a boss before having, this kind of like life-changing experience of like, okay. And she is a lot more generous afterwards with bonuses and time off and like actually eating, because her like picky princess thing was about her only eating 3 bites of whatever food she had because she said she just didn't like anything. But then really, I think it was kind of more like her being really like sad, and like they touch up on it in the show in quite a few places, that she was in quite a dark place before this whole incident that really like also, has some different kinds of experiences as well. Like she definitely doesn't have like an easy time throughout it, but she seems to, like you've said with Ree, become a lot more grounded throughout their experience. But I think that's like also, what are some kind of, I guess, both ones that move the plot forward or ones that don't? But what are some favorite moments of this show that kind of stand out to you as something that makes this kind of, I do feel like this one stands out among K dramas, not having watched a lot of them, but knowing a lot of the general tropes that you see of it being more in a soap opera world. This one, while it has a lot of I'd say like a lot of the meat of a soap opera, it definitely seems to kind of branch out past that. So
I think
yeah,
so. That's true.
yeah.
That's true.
So what are some, kind of moments from the show that seem to kind of be like larger, and maybe why this one has so much popularity, as even for viewers that wouldn't necessarily normally watch this kind of show?
Well, I think the episodes are really long, which gives it a chance to tell a lot of different stories at once. I will say, because what's really nice about their love story is that they just like each other and love each other, and them not being together is upsetting, but it's not because of each other. So it's not like he's mean and then, she wants him for his money or something like that. They care about each other. They just can't be together due to other circumstances, which makes it a very interesting draw. And then they throw in these side characters that are given a lot of backstory. I mean, not all of them, but I think the wiretapper is given a pretty big backstory of how he knows Ree, but also his brother, and why he is a wiretapper, how he's not proud of it, how he's mistreated, and nobody likes him because he just listens to everyone's private conversations, and they're all aware of it. But I think having really strong side characters like the village ladies and his team, oh gosh, I can't pronounce his name, but the one that's really rude to her, he's
Oh
just
yeah.
always a comedic presence. Whenever he shows up, he's just like telling her like, "I hate you and I would kill you." And she was like, "Well, I would kill you too." So, we're just gonna just bury each other. So and yet there's still such a friendship between them, even though when they reunite, he's too proud to admit it. And she's like, "Come here, hug me." And he's like, "I don't even, I barely recognized you. I didn't care that you were gone." But he does care. So I think all that stuff, the side characters, and the fact that they, as the main couple, have a lot of affections towards each other, and it's not just like petty stuff that they cause each other to feel to not be together. Yeah, like they're not making up obstacles between each other.
No,
It's just greater than that.
yeah, it's not like they go through the emotional ups and downs of like, oh no, maybe like, because there's a lot of most shows they have arcs of like, oh, they're breaking up for some like unknown reason, or there's like oh, they're kind of into this person now, so we're gonna have like this sort of like,
Right.
as the audience you get emotionally manipulated for a lot of different reasons that sometimes seem natural and sometimes don't. But this one having the very clear logistical difficulty of they
Yeah.
can't just be in a long distance relationship too where they could call each other all the time. It's like they really have to leave a lot of this up in the air. No pun intended. But they like also he does this move of having the head of the kind of their version of the national like security kind of, I think they call it NIS, and I feel like it must be similar to our sort of CIA type thing. And they set him up with this phone where he can send her like
Oh my
scheduled
gosh.
text
Yes.
messages. And this is,
Yes.
I know this really plays into the fantasy side of things, but he is like he's kind of basically doing like the PS I love you via
I
text.
know. Yes.
Yeah. Where he
So
so
yeah, so
sweet.
go on. Go on, Tracy. Go on.
I know, but he just like leaves all these kind of like notes and instructions for her, and it's very sweet because there are all these things that I think he just like picks up on, like, you don't normally eat breakfast, you should at least have an apple today before you start work, and like, why don't we both always take walks at 12:30 together, even though we won't be together, we'll both just take our break from work then, and like always eat lunch with your coworkers, and like, and I like too that he leaves her the song, like the piano song that he writes for her. And I mean, the piano song moments in general throughout the show are super sweet. Of the, she memorizes this song that she heard in Switzerland once when she was there on a trip, and it happens to be when he was studying abroad, and playing it on a dock. And it's just like all of these, and he has this camera that's like full of pictures that are randomly of her, that even at the end Don is kind of like, I guess this was meant to be that we weren't going to be together, because I kept wondering why you kept taking pictures of the landscapes instead of taking any pictures of me, which you are kind of like, man,
That is true.
stone
That's true.
cold. This girl flies out from North freaking Korea. That can't be easy to go visit you in Switzerland. And you're kind of like, I guess you could tag along with me today.
Yeah, he just ignores her the entire trip. He turns around and be like, "Oh, you're still here."
Yeah, all the
Great.
flashbacks are like, oh yeah, someone else can sit in the booth with us. It's not like we're here on a date or anything. And you're just like, I mean, like, Dan, I would have tapped out then, girl. You
Yeah.
gotta.
It's so
I
sad when she turns to go one way and then she notices that he walked like the other way and she has to catch up. It's like such a sad shot.
It is.
It is. You kind of do see how the show tries to have these moments that seem very faded, and like also they try to visually really show that like Dan and Reed don't have like a lot of chemistry and aren't really on the same page, like with a lot of the way they just kind of like set them up in scenes of like they're never really like conjoined, and like their body language is always kind of like separate, and where they show him and Sari, and they're always supposed to just be very fluid and very like unintentionally connected. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's something they just are like, oh, as the viewer, you're supposed to kind of be like, well, they're just like, meant to be. So they're like magnets for each other, which I think like after watching, you're like, they are meant to be, but there are clearly some conversations that could have been.
Yes, very, very true. Very true.
Like the fact that the last episode has the moms being like, so the engagement is broken off. I was like, okay, the engagement has really been broken off for about, of the 16 episodes, it seems like at least 10 of the episodes, he fully was like, yeah, I'm no longer dating this person. But then you realize later, I'm like, he actually never broke up with that poor girl.
No, he didn't. That
Not
was really
not at
frustrating,
all.
actually, because he should have. I feel like he should have done it, and that whole finale was a movie in itself, right? Because it
Oh
goes
yeah.
into this whole like P.S. I love you, and then it goes into wrapping up everybody else's story, and it's her who tells him like, oh, I know we were gonna meet, but let's just meet now and do this, and it's hard. It sucks because ultimately, like I said before, other people kind of clean up their mess,
Yeah, that is true.
but then they still have this cute story where they're together. And I mean, how do you feel about their ending? Because
Oh yeah.
I am really conflicted about it. It's kind of confusing. I don't know if it's actually it's an ending, but I don't know if it's a happy one.
It's difficult because you watch it as the ending is really not an ending because they're prolonging this. Okay, there's gonna be a certain point where you're probably both gonna get cut off. Where not so much Sari, but for him, it's like at some point they might not let you just go to Switzerland every year. Like,
Yeah.
something could happen at any moment. Like, and as much as it's great that it seems like you're under the assumption that Sari has kind of like gotten this like timeshare or villa of some sort in the Alps, which side note is it's just like extremely beautifully filmed there. And it's insane. Like I I don't know. It's kind of out of this world for being like, oh, this is like a little like soap opera drama show. And you're just like, they're in like these Alps during peak summer and just having these like crazy like 360 shots of them. It's nuts. But they also, yeah, it does seem like it's weird because there is a time limit on that too. I mean, they have this cute conversation when they're drunk one night, just like drinking soju together, of him being like, oh, like I want to see you grow old, I want to have kids, and like all these things. And you're kind of like, someone would really have to make like a crazy choice with crazy consequences in order for that to happen. And like that's kind of what they've kind of pushed off, is like right now they're kind of like, well, we have our Switzerland, which is, both beautiful. It's also kind of funny of it on a play on words way. Just like, we're in Switzerland. But it's also just like, I like it in the sense of it's not like they've both had to really go their separate ways just yet. So I think as a viewer who's kind of like, I don't want them to be parted just now, but I also look at it as like, how are they going to make this work? Or are they okay with the fact that like it's, similar to the rest of the show, they always kind of had these situations of like, if you just go into the shadows at some point, I'll know that it's just because like you can't meet up anymore. Like there's some, logistical reason, or, for him, it's a bit scarier of like, yeah, you might have like gone to jail or got sent away, or got recruited back into the military or something like that. I mean, he gets discharged to do piano, and that's great. And it seems like people who are doing like artsy things are able to get certain leave. But yeah, it does still seem like there would be consequences if he didn't come back on time, because you do
Yeah.
start to wonder like, oh, could they both just like live in Switzerland?
Yeah, right. Like, is that the plan where he becomes like a diplomat for North
Yeah.
Korea and could just hang out in Switzerland and she could remote work from the Swiss Alps? Yeah, right. Everyone's remote working now, anyways. I think that's the sad part because
That's the
they're
sad
not
part.
really together. And well, how long are you just gonna hang out for 2 weeks every year?
Yeah.
And yet what I really like about the ending is that even though the team hangs out in Seoul, and obviously they had a great time. They were drinking beer and eating BBQ chicken and being able to game all day at the internet cafe. And when they go back, they were bummed out that they don't have it. But you also see them hang out and they're still having a very nice time with their community. And it's still such a lovely life for them. I mean, in this world, anyways, in this fictional world of Crash Landing on me, like that, they're still in a good place despite
Yeah.
the limits of the situation.
Yeah, they definitely seem to. The one thing they want to push is like these people really make the most of every situation.
Yeah.
Like they make the most of being like in pretty much a horrible situation of like, they miss their families. Some of it is, universal with like anyone who's kind of like out and about and kind of in the middle of nowhere and in a military situation where there's an element of violence and sacrifice involved, and so they're having a tough time, and on top of that they're within a dictatorship, so then they're also having that level of stress, and kind of at any moment we could get in trouble for not paying enough attention in one situation, because that's even what Sari brings up at first, like, oh well, I could just tell them you were drinking on the job, and he even was like, "Oh my gosh, like I would be in the most trouble." So there's there's things like that, and you can see them being so, I think, like, psychologically, you look at them and so and they're just like so carefree, and it takes them a minute to like get there. Like, I think even when they get to her house, they're trying to like find all the bugs and be like, "Oh, you got to get all the cameras out from everywhere." And she's like,
Hmm.
"There's no cameras here." And there's a lot of those things where they realize later like, "Oh, we can really like do a lot here." And even when they're all given the deal of like, "If you want to stay here, we will set you up." They're like, "This is a very different situation than what would
Yeah.
happen if you were captured on our side." And it's like, yeah, yeah. They're like, "We get great food here." And like and all this stuff, and they're kind of talking about it, and you can see them like obviously tempted by the option, but they kind of know like the really, tragic consequences that would happen if they did defect, because it is just like, well, then everyone else we know would be in a lot of trouble, because that's kind of how things were going on there. So even before they came back, like the wiretapper's wife and kid were getting into trouble, and that's like one of the big moments where you see the village ladies just like pull a kind of Spartacus moment to like keep her there. And that's that's kind of like a huge way they go out for a limb for each other. But yeah, I think they do a good balance of that, of showing like, like people, even in these like really extreme, circumstances, there are some things they can still do and they don't take that for granted. And it's like cooking with what they have and doing it like as a very communal thing, and having these like really simple life moments of like we all sit around together and we eat this meal that we all helped make, and you know continue on with our lives, and like pay attention to kind of like the calendar holidays and all these kind of like, do this because this, and he does that in his like PS I love you text messages of, you should really eat the local food on this holiday. Or like, yeah,
Yeah.
like they get into somewhat of like the old school lunar calendar of like those sort of things. And like I think those are the things that they kind of show as like bright moments in their way. But I also like when she's not able to do a lot for like the village ladies, and she like, you do see a lot of people like leaving letters and then burning them. That part was kind of cool too, like of, okay, if you're going to say something sketchy, like you can't do it for like the wiretappers and the other people. You got to write yourself a letter and then just give someone a lighter, and they'll be like, read it and burn. Like you see the dad do that, even with like
Yeah.
her letter to the village ladies, they have to like trash that. And but they're like very touched by it. And then when Dan's mom comes back from a trip to Europe and has all these like all of the moisturizers or like kind of toiletry products that are each dedicated to one of the village ladies, that was
Yeah.
also a cute moment of, she wanted to show them like, I didn't forget about you guys.
Right. Yeah.
And even though I can't really talk to you, I think like that is for me the most heartbreaking part of the show, is like
They
it
can't talk to
shouldn't.
each other anymore.
Yeah, it's like it shouldn't be so hard, but then obviously it is for the political reasons. So that's like where you're like, in other shows they would just have it be long distance friendships and long distance relationships, but they really have to like work on it around these loopholes. And you're right, those are the parts that make it so sad, because even just like the friends, you feel bad that it's like she's really bonded with these guys and she pretty
Yeah.
much never gets to see them. Like she barely gets to see the main love interest, but she's really like not gonna see those guys ever again. And the main things they keep saying in the show is like, oh, well, maybe the reunification will happen and we'll all get to hang out. And you kind of like watch that as a viewer and go like, I don't know, guys. Yeah, like
Like, I don't know. I mean, it's nice to say.
it's like they're very optimistic, but you're like, you might have to wait. Like, I mean, anything could happen. But it just really seems like we're not in the last sprints of that. Like we're still in the like decades away type of thing. And that's from a extreme outsider looking in. But yeah, that's the part of the show where I'm like, I mean, I do enjoy the optimism of that, of like,
Yeah.
maybe peace will come and like we will be able to come together. Like you really do. Like, and as you watch the show, I think you do start to feel, more humanized as well by like, oh, like these people are good people in a bad circumstance. And there's the way, especially like the comedic relief guy talks, you do want to think that a lot of them have been prescribed to believe a certain thing, and you're kind of seeing them like transport to both places, and you're mostly focusing on like the goodness in everyone and how they are products of their environment. And you're like, oh, they could all be happy together. So I think that's like my final thoughts. Wendy, do you have any final thoughts on Crash Landing that we haven't gotten into?
Oh my gosh, I would just reiterate that it's a great show. Everyone should watch it. They do CO Dan dirty, and
Oh yeah.
that's unfortunate. And I think everyone should just, give it a chance, just because it's a lot of fun and you just get insight into North Korea and South Korea that you don't typically get to see. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I know. That's like the one part we won't plot ruin, because I do think the way they do CO Dan dirty is worth watching. It's definitely
Mhm.
for having it be like a B almost C plot line. It's gutting. It's gutting. We'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, what about you, Daniel? What did you think from what you saw in the finale?
Okay, with spoiling or without spoiling?
With
oh,
spoiling.
it's spoiling.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Sia Dan sitting there in like what looked like her childhood bedroom, telling her family she was never going to marry again and go get revenge. I was like, wait a minute, like, are we just gonna watch like an action thriller, like Sia Dan revenge movie for the next like? Just like
Yeah,
while all
it's
the
her
love
Kill
stuff's
Bill.
happening, like she's gonna go and confront the siblings and everything. I was like, what is about to happen?
I would love to watch her Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was like. Are we really gonna go? Because she had nothing to lose at that point. And there was a scene, and I'm kind of blanking on it, that kind of comes up after that, where it is kind of clear that she could just start, offing people,
yeah.
because she's been through so much in this show.
She really could get her spin-off that way, because that is pretty much an origin story.
Yeah,
maybe
it
that's
really
the second
is.
series.
It really could. You've heard it here first, guys. CO Dan spin-off.
I don't know what that one would be called, but we can leave it at that. That was Crash Landing on You. Is that the series? Yeah, Crash Landing on You is the title of the series, and this was Primetime Party Time. Thank you for joining us. This show could not have been made without the following amazing people. We're talking our artwork was done by Fen. Find her at FenLatte on Instagram. Our theme song was done by Jwright. Find him at jwrightmusic.com. Website with thanks to Coco. Production manager was BMac. And Wendy, thank you for coming on and talking Crash Landing on You with us.
Woo!
What else do we do? If you want to rant, roast, and or rave with us, you can hit us up by sending us an email at info@ptptshow.com. You can hit us up on the voicemail or chat box, both on the ptptshow.com homepage, and catch the next Primetime Party Time next Monday, live 9 p.m. Pacific, right here on ptptshow.com. And if you go paragliding in the meantime, don't get trapped in North Korea. Or maybe do. It kind of worked out somewhat well. I don't know, there's a lot of bloodshed in the show. Maybe it didn't work out super. It depends. It's conflicting series.
Yeah. If you were in that warehouse where he had the shotgun, it did not work out for you.
I think it's fitting that the show with the longest episodes has broken what I have to imagine the Primetime Party Time record for longest episode. I kind of like it.
I had a feeling that was going to happen.
There's so much in this show. This show's crazy. Just the amount of characters, the amount of plot lines, the amount of there's this love story. Yeah, there's these funny corporate bits. Yeah, there's this, there's these crazy con man plots, and there's a whole military subplot and politics and family members. Yeah, there's enough.